Welcome to the New Hampshire Secrets, Legends, and Lore podcast, where twice a month we explore the world of New Hampshire that lies outside of the hard news. I'm your host, Wayne King, and I invite you to join us for an adventure that will take us on a journey together to explore those things that are unlikely to make the pages of your newspaper, the waves of your radio station, or the bits and bytes of your favorite news website. Yet for many of us, these stories will reveal what makes life here in the Granite State truly worth living. Together we'll uncover some secrets, speculate on a few rumors and legends, and we'll meet the people and a critter or two, both living and long departed, who weave together the colorful tapestry of New Hampshire's past, as well as some who are helping to build our future. We'll explore places known and unknown that you will want to add to your bucket list. We'll laugh together, gasp together, and maybe even shed a tear or two.
Yay. Oh, look. Oh, wow.
There's my salute to you.
Oh my gosh. I loved that. Was such a beautiful review you wrote. It meant so much to me, Wayne.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my God. Oh, that's a great picture.
Yeah. You can tell me what kind of, I assume it's just a painted turtle, right?
It's a red ear,
Red
actually.
ear.
Yeah, it's a red
Okay.
ear. Yeah. Paints are native to around here. Red ears aren't. They're a little more south and west, but they're living here because people release them as pets and they do very well. And they
Oh,
look very similar. I mean, they're the ones that have the red, obviously he has the red ear.
yeah.
Um, but what a handsome fellow. And I just love he's like the cosmic turtle. That's wonderful.
He was, my son and I discovered him in the Baker River at some point when we were, uh, I think, tubing down the river somewhere.
Oh wow. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. So did you take that picture? Was the light or did
Well,
you
I,
did you
I,
mount it on there?
I'm sure that I did a little something to enhance the light around it, but I did take the picture, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's wonderful. And they're such attractive turtles. They're such sweeties. Everyone had red ears. Like, well, you and I are about the same age, and everybody had these baby turtles growing up, and no one told us how to take care of them, so their shells got soft. But some people did feed them properly, including Sylvester Stallone, who had two named Cuff and Link, and I think they're still alive.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they were kind of everybody's, gateway drug to turtles.
Well, I am
Everyone loves them.
let me introduce you so we can get this started officially. I'm speaking with my friend Sy Montgomery, who is an extraordinary writer and has just published. Uh, I don't know how many books you've done, Sy, but I'd like you to tell us that. But Of Time and Turtles is I think a celebration of life.
Oh, thank you so much, Wayne. Yeah, I've done 38 now.
Oh,
And many of them are for young readers who are super important, but they don't take as long to write as the adult books like Of Time and Turtles, which took 3 years to research and live and write and also illustrate because we have the beautiful illustrations by Matt Patterson,
right.
who's a major character in the book as well.
Yes, he
But
is.
oh, he would love you. Gosh, we got to figure out somehow to meet and play with turtles together sometime.
Well, I would love to do that. And by the way, our mutual friend Daryl Thompson sends his best to you and Howard. And
Oh, great. Well, right back at him.
yeah, I saw him. I saw him this morning. He's been living with me for a while, and he's moving out end of June, uh, trying to arrange, I think, to be someplace that's closer to the research that he needs to do on the shaker studies.
Oh, wow. Well, how nice that you get to have such a cool roommate, and thanks for putting him up too. That's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
nifty.
yep. It's been fun. So, okay, tell me how, to begin with, it was that you went from octopi to turtles.
Yeah, it's a big leap, isn't it? Um, well, when I wrote The Soul of an Octopus, and I just, by the way, published another octopus book um, with National Geographic called Secrets of the Octopus. But Soul of an Octopus, which came out in 2015, um, the subtitle for that book was, uh, God, what was it? It was something like Exploring the Mysteries of Consciousness. And it was looking at octopuses and consciousness being one of the major mysteries in philosophy. There are said to be two hard problems in philosophy, one of which is consciousness and the other is time. And so here I was having that book came out in 2015. I wrote a few more. And the year before the pandemic, I thought, well, what's going to be my next project? And I thought, I was like 60 or fixing to be 60 or just over 60 at that point. And it makes you think about time. And I thought, you know, in all my explorations of everything, I've always had an animal guide. And who better to guide me in an exploration of time than a turtle? Because turtles are these long-lived species. They arose with the dinosaurs. They're still with us, even though the dinosaurs are gone or they've turned into birds. And I thought maybe I was mature enough to take on this philosophical mystery. Well, little did I know that the pandemic was waiting for us, which upended time, which annihilated time.
Yeah.
I mean, all the ways we normally keep track of time, you know, holidays, gatherings like Christmas and Easter and weddings and even funerals, graduations, all were canceled due to the pandemic. Even 9 to 5, our workday week was pretty much canceled.
That's right.
So I found another way of keeping track of time, and that was thanks to the turtles. And because of them, during the time that most of us felt lost and at sea, without time as our companion, I felt connected to seasonal time. I felt connected to eternal time. I felt connected to turtle time. And in fact, that was the original title for the book, was Turtle Time. But it got changed by marketing, as often happens.
So, so you sort of naturally fell into that, but talk a little more about doing this all in the midst of the pandemic, because that seemed to have, in the background of the book, you feel sort of the raw emotions that you're going through as a result of the pandemic, but somehow, obviously, the connection with the people and the turtles sort of helped to heal that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I conceived of the book before the pandemic, but actually began to live the book um, shortly after the pandemic struck. In order to introduce readers to individual turtles and the individual stories they had to share with us, Matt Patterson, the artist, and I were kind of looking around to apprentice ourselves to a turtle rescue. And we found these two amazing ladies who live in Southbridge, Mass, and in their suburban house in the basement, they have between 250 and 1,000 sick, injured, abandoned, or hatchling turtles that they care for. And we essentially apprenticed ourselves to them. And we had this all planned. Everything was going great. It was going to start in spring of 2020. And then bam, here comes this weird contagion. So at first we were afraid, like, well, what if we can't do this? But we became kind of a pod. And it didn't even feel funny to be masked because we were at a hospital. And it's normal for people working at a hospital to mask up. So when we were outside, we didn't feel we needed to mask, but when we were inside, we did. And it worked out to be a blessing in a way to us. Southbridge is over 2 hours drive away, but there were fewer cars on the road. So it didn't take as long to get there. So we went there several times a week. And with fewer cars on the road, fewer animals were killed. In fact, I was quite shocked to read a study that said simply getting so many cars off the road during the pandemic was the greatest conservation measure taken in America since the creation of the national parks.
Wow.
That is how many animals are being killed by our cars on our roads. And turtles, particularly, they may not even be able to process the movement of the cars coming towards them. Everything is slow for turtles.
Hmm.
And they've been here for so long, hundreds of millions of years. These roads and these cars are just a brand new wrinkle for them. They did not evolve to race across the road faster than a speeding automobile. And so a lot of the turtles who we met were injured by cars, and Alexia Bell and Natasha Nowick were able to patch them up incredibly. And often, after months and sometimes years of treatment, they could return to the wild turtles who were smashed up beyond all recognition, turtles who looked like road crayons. They were able to put their shells back together. They could put, stuff their organs back in their bodies. And for a lot of the turtles that are hit on roads, they're mothers looking to lay their eggs. And Natasha and Alexia could even help the dead ones because the dead mothers had eggs in their bodies and they often could save at least some of those eggs put
Mhm.
them in their incubators, and then return the babies to the wild. So it was marvelous to be witness to and part of this great healing during a time that our country was beset with this horrible contagion, and also beset with such horrendous strife, such terrible political division, such sadness and grief, with anger everywhere.
Yep.
Oh, Wayne, it was just so healing for us to be able to take a hand in putting something broken back together during that time.
Yeah. Now, Cy, we're if I'm not mistaken, we're coming into that very dangerous time for turtles. Can you, I mean, talk a little bit about why I would say that?
Yes, turtles are nesting right now. They're looking around for places to lay their eggs. The males are looking to mate with females, and some babies are hatching out of their eggs, like now and in coming weeks. So normally turtles wouldn't be walking around on the road because they're swimming in they're swimming in the rivers and ponds, and they're walking around in the forest. But when they lay their eggs, they don't lay their eggs next to water. They often go to a sandy area hundreds of yards away from the river. And because we have so many roads here in America, it's almost impossible to go anywhere without crossing a road. Increasingly, people are putting up signs for turtle crossings, um, but some people don't notice, or they don't know what to do. But there's so much that we can individually do to help turtles this time of year, which is why it's so great that you and I are talking. I mean, one, we can help a turtle cross the road. And many people don't realize that you need to take the turtle in the direction it's going.
Ah, yes.
Because otherwise, think of it, if it's a female and she's going to go lay her eggs, this is like a pregnant woman in labor trying to get to the hospital. What if you picked her up and took her back to her office? Instead of, I mean, that wouldn't be very good. Thanks a lot, right? So take the turtle the direction that they're going. Some people are afraid of picking up turtles because they think every turtle is a snapping turtle, and they think every snapping turtle is out to get them. There are very safe ways to pick up snapping turtles, but most turtles aren't snapping turtles. We have lots of different species of turtles, and there's easy ways to pick up even snappers, and we can go into that if you want. But in addition to this, when they're laying their eggs, um, one thing that we do with permits from the state at a site that we describe in the book, but this is something that anybody can really do, is we can protect those nests. Most turtle nests are dug up by predators. In fact, many people will see a turtle nest and they'll see turtle eggs around the mouth of the nest. And they'll be, oh, great, a turtle hatched here. No, when turtles hatch, they leave the eggshell behind in the nest.
Mhm.
If you see the eggs out there, it means someone dug them up. A raccoon, a skunk, a dog, a curious child. Um, Sometimes ants will get into the nest. Sometimes tree roots will invade the nest and drink the contents of the eggs if it's a drought. So everything will eat turtle eggs. And the other thing is everything eats baby turtles. So to protect the turtle nest, one of the things that we do at this site that I've kept secret because there's a huge illegal trade in turtles for pets and for medicine right now, um, is you can build like a little box essentially over it out of wire with a skirt, or you can build like a chimney out of wire around it so that raccoons and dogs and other things don't get into it. And then you check, you know, how many days from when it's laid when you think that the babies are going to hatch. And then you can give them a ride to the river or the forest, and they won't be eaten. Another thing that's being done, again, you have to do this with a permit from the state because people don't we shouldn't just kidnap turtles from the wild as pets, Every turtle who hatches and survives is like a miracle because of what we just described, right? You take that animal out of the wild, and here's someone who should be breeding, who should be laying hundreds of eggs in their lifetime, and you've removed that animal from the breeding population. But many states have this head starting program in which you take baby turtles and give them to people who know what to do, and they raise those baby turtles for like 9 months until they're much, much bigger than they normally would be. And then they let them go where they were hatched. And they found with one species, the Blandings turtle, and I just let go my 3 Blandings yesterday. With that species, growing them up 9 months in captivity so that they're big enough that fish won't eat them and frogs won't eat them and chipmunks won't eat them, increases their chances of surviving by a factor of 30.
Wow.
I know, it's really amazing. So, if you love turtles and want to have a pet turtle, adopt an unwanted pet turtle from someplace like Turtle Rescue League, or get on board with head starting turtles with a permit from the state. Zoo New England is one of the organizations that coordinates this, and schools are getting involved, and they're just growing up these little baby turtles so that they get released and have a greater chance of surviving.
Huh. Well, I'm glad you brought up the issue of making sure that you help the turtle in the direction that they're going, because I remember one story in your book where a well-meaning driver uh, put the turtle right back where it came from, and that certainly wasn't a hope. I'm seeing more and more signs on the road, but what are the areas where people are driving that they should be cognizant of the possibility of having turtles in the pathway?
Well, if your road goes through a wetland,
Mhm.
turtles will be emerging from that wetland. Um, and so many roads do. In fact, sometimes turtles will nest by the side of the road, and those are often doomed because, the car is going to pull over and smash the nest, or the babies are going to hatch and rush out into the highway. We've removed nests from inappropriate areas, taken them back to incubators at Turtle Rescue League and incubated the babies and then released them. Um, because turtles have been doing the same thing successfully for hundreds of millions of years, who can blame them for going to their ancestral nesting ground, which is now covered mostly by a parking lot,
Right.
and laying their eggs in this tiny patch of sand, like right next to the parking lot? And why is that no good by the parking lot? Well, for one reason, the asphalt heats everything up so badly that those eggs may just cook. And two, the babies are going to hatch and run into the parking lot where they're going to get run over by cars. Sometimes mother turtles will nest in a place that's been all dug up for someone to build a shed or a house or something like that. And the people want to get on with the construction project. They don't want to wait 30 or 60 days for the eggs to hatch. But happily, they have somewhere to call. They can call Turtle Rescue League, or they can find a wildlife rehabilitator near them, and those folks can go out and move those nests and incubate those eggs so that those babies aren't lost to the population. But turtles are just beset with problems. It's just unbelievable. Of all the terrestrial vertebrates on the planet, turtles as a group are the most in trouble. And they're facing all the threats everybody else is, you know, um, climate change and habitat destruction and roads. But all of those problems are even worse for turtles because of the very adaptations that have made them so successful for hundreds of millions of years. They can't be running across the road like a squirrel or a deer. And global climate change is horrendous on turtles because, one, sea turtles, their nesting beaches are disappearing entirely because of sea level rise. Two, in many species of turtles, the sex of the turtle is dependent on the temperature in the nest. So if the temperature rises, all your turtles are going to be one sex. And if it rises above that, all of your turtles are going to be boiled eggs. So that's particularly bad. And on top of that, and the habitat destruction that plagues everybody, as I mentioned, there is this enormous, destructive, malignant trade in turtles. And as you know, North America is Turtle Island. We have more species of turtles in North America than any other continent. And this is something Native Americans knew because so many nations called it Turtle Island and hold the turtle sacred. And what this means is that the poachers who want to take turtles away to sell them as pets or sell them as medicine or sell their shells as ornaments, they're all coming to North America now. And they're even combing the scientific literature to find out where scientists have done their studies of turtles. And now scientists are refusing to publish where it is because scientists who did came back the year after their thing was published, every turtle was gone.
Mhm.
And, oh, it just kills your heart to see this happening.
I suspected that that was why you did not really give much information about where these various rescue leagues and organizations were during the course of the book.
Yes, and many of them, even though we don't want to give their location, many of them have lots of surveillance. Like the Turtle Survival Alliance, I didn't even say what city they're near. I mean, but they have, razor wire and alarm systems and armed guards and attack dogs to protect their
Wow.
turtles because they're so valuable. They have some of the rarest turtles in the world. And our turtle nesting area where I just let go my little blandings yesterday, we totally concealed. We aren't even, there's no way you can find, we couldn't even use the names of the people we were working with because we didn't want anyone to be able to track their last names. We made up a town. The town of Torrington does not exist. It does not
Right.
exist. So you could never find it. But yeah, we go to great lengths to conceal this for that very reason.
Hmm. Um, you were in the soul of an octopus. You mentioned that consciousness was an important part of it, and we recently lost one of the great philosophers of consciousness, Dan Dennett, who was a friend of mine, went to the same camp I did as a kid.
No,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Gosh, Wayne, I think you know everybody.
And you know, I wondered how you became a philosopher.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm not. I'm a philosopher
Well,
mom.
you are in a lot of ways.
Well, I thought about consciousness a lot as soon as I found out what it was. Because for the longest time, people said animals didn't have it. And I knew they had it.
Right.
Every child knows that. And I think some of these truths get stamped out of our young minds by a society that wants to push the lie that the point of life is to have a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of garbage stuff, and a whole lot of money, and a big house and a big car, and all that stuff that every holy man and woman and philosopher has told us does not lead to happiness at all and often leads to its opposite. So consciousness was something that always interested me because I felt that the world, the whole universe is alive. And there's many philosophers that understood this, Thales of Miletus, for example, it has this great, it's attributed to him, a quote attributed to him: the universe is alive and has fire in it and is full of gods. And this is how I've always felt, that the universe is palpably, visibly alive, full of life, full of consciousness, and has fire in it. It's incandescent with life and is full of gods. That means that all life is holy and that we walk in wonder among the sacred. So I've always felt that, even as a child, although I couldn't have articulated it.
Right.
But I just walked through this world gobsmacked by all these lives around me. And I feel so bad for so many people who who feel that you can only be friends with one species, that only one species is worth paying attention to. And not only that, there's people who think that there's only certain kinds of people that are worthy of your the it's crazy. It's like telling a child that they can only eat one food, or can only listen to one record, or only read one book. It just is so impoverishing to cut yourself off from all these other lives, all this wonder.
Yeah. And I mean, there are so many for people who are intrigued about this book, and just highly recommend it. There are so many beautiful gems of wisdom within the book that I found myself, the first time I listened to it on Audible as I was driving, so I couldn't take notes. But the second time I listened to it, I found myself taking a lot of notes and feeling like there were some really important things to remember about that.
Well, the turtles that we met were these great teachers, and they had so much to show us about patience and fortitude and courage. Um, and one of them in particular, um, really, I just fell in love with this guy. And by the way, he's age appropriate and unmarried, although he is a reptile. Uh, and his name was Fire Chief. And oh gosh, Wayne, I now can see Fire Chief every single day. Um, he's this 42-pound giant snapping turtle who was hit by a car while he was crossing from his spring pond to his fall and winter hibernation pond one day. When he had originally hatched, the road separating those two ponds was a little country lane, and now it's a highway. So he got hit. His shell was cracked. His legs were paralyzed. His tail was paralyzed. And using his strong front legs, he crawled back into his pond. His summer pond was by a fire station, and the firemen all knew him. He'd been living there for decades and decades and decades, and they saw him when he came out. But the brave firemen saw their friend hurt, and they're used to running into burning buildings to rescue people, but they were scared because he's a snapping turtle and they didn't want to pick him up. So they called Natasha and Alexia, these two skinny ladies, one of whom, Natasha, is blind. And they come rushing out with their kayak. They launch the kayak into the pond. They see the Fire Chief. Alexia dives in and comes up with this very upset, bloodied snapping turtle with his shell in pieces in her hands. Well, she takes him back to Turtle Rescue League. Okay, she fixes up his shell, and by the time we met him, which was early 2020, his shell had healed, but his legs had not. And so Matt and I, one of the cool things that we got to do at Turtle Rescue League was that we oversaw this giant 42-pound snapping turtle's physical therapy. And at one point, Natasha and Alexia, with input from lots of other people, they did several different prototypes, but they came up with a wheelchair for the guy. But we would work with him indoors in the winter and outside in the summer. to build up his strength. And our hope was that he would rule a pond one day again. And I don't want to ruin the surprise at the end of the book. He does do so, but not in the way we expected. But that's just what turtles give you. They give you these surprising happy endings.
Yeah. Well, they give you hope.
Yes, they do. They do. I mean, turtles can survive the most horrendous things that would kill a person. I mean, we saw miracles like every day at Turtle Rescue League.
Yeah.
We saw a turtle who he'd cracked a shell, he'd broken his legs, his worst of all, and he'd broken his jaw. His brain he had a brain concussion, and he to him the world was constantly spinning. So Alexia and Natasha fixed up his shell and they wired his jaw, but because he thought the world was upside down, as you sometimes do when you get a brain concussion, he kept flipping upside down. Well, that's no good.
Yeah.
And particularly since he had this broken shell. And so now he was on the broken shell and he's using his broken jaw to try to flip upside down. So they tried everything. They tried taping him down. They tried weighting him down, but they couldn't because the shell was so raw, the wound was so raw. They came up with this brilliant solution. They found a pitcher, a plastic pitcher that this turtle, whose name was Chutney, he fit right in the pitcher, and the pitcher's handle acted as a kickstand. So he was shoved in there and he couldn't flip upside down. And when the world finally stopped spinning, which it did, they took him out of the pitcher. His shell was healed, his jaw was healed, and we were present when he was let go into the wild, where he'll live for decades and decades and decades, and hopefully father hundreds and hundreds of babies.
Yeah, I think a lot of people uh, don't realize uh, the the number of eggs and generations of turtles that just a single turtle can be responsible for.
Yeah, a snapper can lay 100 eggs. I mean, that's a lot of eggs, but an big old snapper could do that. Frequently, there'll be, 30 or 40. Um, and the females will lay once they reach maturity, I mean, they have to run a gauntlet to be able to reach sexual maturity because everybody eats the eggs, everybody eats the babies. Even little chipmunks will hold the baby turtle like a hamburger and gnaw off his arms and legs and head. It's horrible. I know, I know. But, every adult female or male, who makes it to adulthood is an absolute miracle. But once they get to that point, if they're not hit by a car and they're not run over by a lawnmower or chewed by a dog or something like that, they really don't have a lot of natural predators. That shell is such a great invention. The shell is what invented the turtle, really. Um, they're the only animals with shells like that. I mean, armadillos are said to have a shell, but this is a real shell, and it's um, it's part of their skeleton. Their skeleton is fused to it, as you know, but a lot of people don't. People still think that turtles can crawl out of their shell and walk around like a hermit crab.
Yeah,
Well, they can't do that any more than we could walk around without our bones.
right.
But it's such an effective shield. And they found the ancestor of the turtle. They one of the ancestors that looks totally like a lizard. His name is Papa Kelly's, which means grandfather of turtles. And it looks like a lizard, but it has this kind of breastplate. I was surprised to learn that turtles evolved from the bottom up, that the shells started with the plastron, not the back.
Huh.
And that to me says that their main predators were coming up from below.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's fascinating. I
yeah, I was shocked.
remember distinctly reading that recently a snapping turtle died that had been alive during George Washington's tenure.
Yeah, that was I think that was an Aldabra tortoise.
Oh,
But yeah, snappers can live over 100 years though.
right.
Um, yeah, there was one who died at age 288.
Wow.
And there's other really old turtles out there that people have not realizing that turtles can feel their shells. Some people carved a date into certain turtle shells. And ow, I mean, that's gotta really hurt. But, 100 years later, you look at that and you're like, wow, that turtle was around a long, long time.
Yeah.
And they learn stuff. People, people are too quick to dismiss the intellect of reptiles, and they're too quick to dismiss the sociality of reptiles. Most people think that they just sit there like a pet rock and that they don't recognize anybody, they don't learn anything. And it's just because they move more slowly, but they learn quickly. And some turtles have been tested on mazes, and they actually can learn the maze, not run the maze, but learn the maze faster than a lab rat.
Huh.
So they're smart.
Well, and you certainly suggest through your writing that there were many of those turtles that uh, seem to recognize you and respond to you during the course of your relationship with them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know it. You know it. With a big snapper, snappers, if they don't know you, they think you're gonna eat them.
Right,
So
right,
they'll snap at you if you try to pick them up.
sure.
Well, the chief, who, is huge, 42-pound turtle, and a snapping turtle, he he can snap all right, but he won't snap at us. And he inhibits his bite. We can feed him a tiny piece of food from our fingers, and he'll actually inhibit the bite so he doesn't bite us even by mistake.
Fascinating. Well, Sy, this I can't recommend of Time and Turtles more highly. And I listened to it several times and read it through, and I'm holding on to a pristine first edition copy that I'm going to get you to sign for my boy Zachary, because he and I rescued turtle eggs in Nicaragua together and a big snapper along the banks of the Baker River a few years later. And so it will have a special meaning to him, I think.
Well, I am honored, and I can get Matt to sign it too.
Oh, good. Yeah. And, before we end, would you tell us, Matt seems to have a love of turtles that was even before yours.
Oh my gosh, that he was born a turtle nerd. I think he hatched out of an egg. Um, his earliest memories are fishing and looking for turtles with his dad in a rowboat. He is so proud to be called a turtle nerd. And his dad, who alas passed passed away very recently, his dad was a biology teacher and aided and abetted Matt in his turtle love to the extent that when he was a little kid, he would hold his child up by the ankles over a known alligator pit so that Matt could pick up the turtle that he saw and wanted to examine. He is amazing with turtles, and he has turtle eyes. You you probably have really good eyes. Um, I'll be looking at something and not see any movement, and he'll be like, "Oh, that's turtle. That's turtle. That's turtle." And we even went out with scientists who had radio telemetry on some box turtles, and we could hear beep, 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 beep. It was right there. The scientists could not see their own turtle, even though it was right around. I couldn't see the turtle. Matt's the one who found the turtle. He's amazing. And he'll just, you'll be with him in a kayak, and then all of a sudden he'll go whoosh, and he'll come up with like a giant snapping turtle, or else he'll come up with like a little paint, or he'll come up with a musk turtle. It's like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat.
And how did you meet? I mean, he's a neighbor of yours now,
He
right?
is now. We live on the same street now. He used to live in New Ipswich, where he grew up. And as a wildlife artist, he and I kind of traveled in the same circles, and he had read Soul of an Octopus. And he got in touch with me because we obviously felt like kindred spirits. Well, I went to meet him at the Broke Art Festival in Peterborough, and we just started doing turtley things together. And then I felt the book coming on, and then another one and another one. We did a book called The Book of Turtles, which has his glorious art, and it's suitable for any age, but it's being marketed as a kid's book because it's full, a picture book.
Yeah.
And his art is also in Of Time and Turtles, and we're now working on a picture book. I've written it, and he's now doing the paintings for it, just on Fire Chief. It's
Oh,
all
cool.
the story of Fire Chief.
Yeah, Fire Chief is sort of the tie that binds throughout the book, which
Yeah.
makes it really wonderful.
Now, I
And
had no idea, of course, when I started, who was, which turtles were going to emerge as the heroes. But I have a picture of them on my desk right here, like normal people have their children. There he
oh,
is.
that's great.
Yeah, Natasha and Alexia got me that picture. They're so great. And, we're still in touch, and
Oh, good.
um, they're doing great. And the book has brought a lot of attention to their rescue and to other rescues, and they're getting lots of volunteers. I'm so pleased that the stories of these turtles move people to do something about it.
Yeah. Well, Sy Montgomery, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and help us reach out to people all over to be aware right now that the turtles might be crossing their path and help them out where they can um, and just love them.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Oh, this was a real pleasure.
It's great talking with you, my friend.
You take care.
Take care.